This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. I have experienced it myself. If you want to find answers, why you do what you do, what is piloting us, what is limiting us, a lot of those answers can be found in hypnotherapy, can also be found in Reiki, i.e. energy healing. It can also be found in astrology. We're going to give you the best of all of that today, starting with somebody who practices hypnotherapy, Reiki, and more, coaches you through. Adrianne Smith is with us today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve. How about yourself?
Fantastic. And we're going to blend astrology with us today. Who do we have?
Alexandra. I do astrology, tarot, and all sorts of good things under Word Witcher, and I practice traditional Hellenistic astrology blended with modern psychological astrology. And the traditional stuff is a little bit more precise and data heavy, so always happy to dig into that.
I have no idea what you just said. I just want to know what I should know. Based on transits and things going on here. So why don't we start on the astrological side? There's been a lot going on. We have, I think, a solar eclipse or a minor solar eclipse. We had the full moon. We have a bunch of different eclipses. We had different planets in retrograde, not just Mercury. At this time, what's going on? What do you think we should know?
So the most important thing about eclipses is to recognize they happen every 6 months, and we enter eclipse season, which starts with the lunation right before the eclipse and ends with the lunation after. And so we just had the total or the partial solar eclipse on the 21st. And then 2 weeks before that, we had the total lunar eclipse in Pisces. And so they occur on the same axis. So we're in opposite signs, like Pisces to Virgo. And when we're in that, you can view there are these things called the nodes. And the nodes are just the place at which when the sun and moon have a new or full moon within a certain number of degrees of the nodes, that means they're close enough together to overlap across the Earth's ecliptic. And when that happens, it amplifies the energy. People view it as very dysfunctional, but it's actually more perfect because they're not usually in alignment. If they were in perfect alignment in their orbit, we would have an eclipse every month. And so it's the time when the two lights come together. And they're very important for us. Like, sun sign astrology is what most people know. You ask someone what they are, and they're answering with their sun sign. And then the moon is our body, it's our emotional sphere. The sun is like our guiding seat of self, kind of part of our purpose in being here. And so when those things get eclipsed, people go a little wonky. And particularly lunar eclipses speak to the people in general, citizens, whereas solar eclipses speak to leaders. And so during solar eclipses, we often see the sudden rise and fall of leaders within that. And then with lunar eclipses, you can look at what happened in Nepal and like the revolution there. And anywhere that the eclipse is totally visible will be more impacted. So in the US, 2017, the Great American Total Eclipse, those events, that's part of why it hit the US harder, whereas the lunar eclipse was completely visible in Nepal. And so if you ever want to know how hard the eclipse is going to hit, look for who can see it best.
Wow. You know what? It seems to make total sense. Never even thought of that. Never even considered that. With what's going on right now, what should we be doing? Should we be looking at relationships with a different, what do you suggest?
So right now, you always want to look at what signs the eclipses are in, and then you want to go to your birth chart. Like, this isn't just about your sun sign. You want to look at your rising sign. And in traditional astrology, we use the whole sign house system. So once you know your rising sign, you know every house because it's one sign per house. So if someone tells me they're rising, I can give them a lot of information about their chart just right out of the gate. And in ancient astrology, the rising sign was arguably the most important because it was the sign on the horizon at the exact moment of your birth. And the degrees of that sign would be different from someone born 5 minutes after you. And so it's very, very specific to you. And it's the point of body and spirit merging, incarnation, all that stuff. And each house is a different theme and area of your life. So if you were a Virgo or Pisces rising, then this would be between the self and relationship spheres, because the descending signs where we find partnership and also Venus and things like that. But when it comes to a South Node eclipse in Virgo, a lot of what was happening was purging, cleansing. There were a lot of body issues like stomach troubles, gut stuff. A lot of people reported like not feeling well, not feeling as hungry, extra motivation to spring clean or to fall clean, like the autumn cleaning, getting rid of stuff. Like, I'm just done with it. Whereas the Pisces eclipse was kind of pulling people towards the spiritual, towards the compassionate. And so when we're in eclipse season, I really recommend that people just kind of watch, because eclipses are one of the things that astrologers we have to be vaguer about than with anything else, because they're sudden beginnings and sudden endings, and there's kind of a volatility to them. Like, we often tell people don't schedule things during eclipses, because they will go sideways. Like, even with Mercury retrograde, we can predict more precisely what will go sideways, but with eclipses, it's harder. And on top of that, this eclipse being in Virgo, which is a Mercury ruled sign, a lot of data problems were happening. Data corruption, technology failures.
Oh yeah.
Like, people are like, is it Mercury retrograde? I was like, no, no, it's eclipse season. It's close, but
Well, I never
more
thought about
dramatic.
that. And a lot of times it's on my radar and I trace back to some Mercury retrogrades, even one last year. Uh, Microsoft 365 went down on the first day of the
Mm, mhm.
retrograde
Mhm.
Yeah.
worldwide.
Yep.
Coincidence?
Was that in December? Was that the winter one, or was that the
Hmm.
earlier one?
I want to say winter, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. The winter one was particularly crunchy because Mercury wasn't just retrograde, it was also in detriment, because in ancient astrology we talk about planetary dignity, and the planets like to be in some signs more than others, which actually brings us to this week, because Mars, this is Mars's redemption arc. Mars is the reason that the first quarter of the year was a dumpster fire. Like, Mars does not.
Thanks, Mars.
Yeah, yeah. We had the Mars retrograde started in December in Leo. And the story for the retrograde really started in September, because September to November, Mars was in what we call fall in Cancer. And it's considered fallen because Mars doesn't do well in the sign of Cancer, because Cancer is the sign of the moon in the body. Mars is hot, fiery, sharp, aggressive. You don't want that ruled by a planet. And in astrology, we do still consider the moon a planet, just as a traditional term. But it the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. You don't want your drive, your passion, what you're focused on, your aggression to be changing every 2.5 days. It's very moody, it's very temperamental, it's very volatile. And so we had the story started September to November. Then we got a brief reprieve in Leo where Mars does a little bit better. And then on January 7th, Mars retrograded back into Cancer and stayed there until April 17th. Um, and
Mhm.
then ruled at the same time a Venus retrograde and a Mercury retrograde that happened back to back. They stationed back to back at the same degrees. And so it was just quarter one. If it felt like a disaster for anybody listening, it wasn't just you. That was, in fact, pretty universal. It's hard for those transits in particular were hard for anyone to really dodge because they covered so much ground and so many different charts that everybody got kind of sucker punched at least once.
I can tell you,
Yeah.
Elle, with full certainty, I've looked back on my life and every major situation, some of them were connected, two in particular, um, worldwide proportion. I'm just going to leave it at that. It was big stuff going on. It was during a Mercury retrograde. And I just looked back, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And one of them was huge, huge, um, and involved miscommunication. And there it was,
Mhm.
right
Mhm.
there. Adrienne,
That's a Mercury hallmark.
when you hear all this stuff,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts and how do you connect this when you work with people through either energy or even hypnotherapy?
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of this going on. So, like when Elle was talking about all of these transits that are hitting the collective, I'll see these themes coming up with my clients. And, my colleagues even will be seeing themes with their clients that are exactly the same as what I'm seeing with mine. And so, like we had Dr. Laura on here a few weeks ago, and so she and I, our offices are right down the hall from each other. And so we end up talking a lot in between sessions and stuff when we have some free time. And it's like, wow, all of my clients have been dealing with this, like this Mercury retrograde, the Venus retrograde, the, eclipse hangover kind of stuff. And, all of these things. And we're seeing similar themes coming up. And so it's very easy to see that, yes, this does have a very tangible impact on people. A lot of people think, oh, it's just woo woo. It's not. It's really, it's affecting people on a level that they may or may not be conscious of. And I think that being cognizant of the astrology that is something, that it's impacting our lives on a daily basis, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, being cognizant of that and kind of like keeping a handle on, okay, what transits are going on right now? How are they impacting me personally? And sort of being proactive in that way can help to mitigate a lot of it. And just that having that consciousness of it, I've found, for me personally, helps a ton. And if I'm feeling a little bit wonky and I'm like, oh, I haven't checked my transits, like what is going on? And a lot of times, like if I don't have time to check or something, I'll just text Elle and I'll be like, hey, what is going on? Why is it a dumpster fire today? And then Elle will text me back and she'll be like, oh yeah, well, it's this and this and this. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. Thank you.
100%. And even looking back at those times that were impactful for me with the Mercury retrogrades, I wasn't looking for it just it's there. What
Yeah.
are the
Yeah.
chances that those things are going to happen outside of that? Yeah, it could happen, but makes much more sense that it happened within them.
Right.
Elle, if we don't know specifically where our sign sits,
Mhm.
within the house and all of that, that's like way out of my wheelhouse. But what should we be doing now? Say this week, next week. What should
Mhm.
we be looking at? Maybe reevaluating, just in general. What do you think?
Yeah. So, one thing that can be really helpful with transits is even if you don't have your rising sign or things like that, what you can do is you can look back at the dates of previous transits with especially within those signs, because to be a good astrologer is to be a good historian. And like all of our data comes from 7,000 years of
Mm.
star nerds looking up and being like, that's happening there, this is happening here. And like, we literally have clay tablets that are nothing but that. And that's kind of where it started. And so just being able to track those things is really helpful. And then with this week, what I really want people to pay attention to is to go back and look at the previous eclipses in Pisces and Virgo that happened at the beginning of this year and in October last year, because that was really the start of this cycle. And eclipses are a multi act story. So, whatever happens in Act One that shows up in Act Two, that's your eclipse story. And that'll give you guidance for what's going to happen in Act Three. like during our
Mm.
next eclipse season. And we got one more week until we hit October, well, a little bit over a week until we hit October 6th, which is the full moon. So we're on the downslope of eclipse season, but we're still in it. And so the most important things right now, really take care of your body and be more generous with your view of how other people are behaving. Like give people more grace right now. And then the other thing is, especially leading up to tomorrow, like today we have a Sun Neptune opposition, which is really good for what we're doing right now, like with conversations on the more mystical and metaphysical, but it's not good for things like, say, who am I? Where am I going? And needing concrete answers. It's a good time to question those things. This week is not a good time to be like, this is what I'm doing, because we're not exactly seeing super clearly. And then,
So are you saying, just to fully
mhm.
clarify, don't take action on those
Y-
things? Let's
yeah,
say you've been something's been marinating. Maybe you're
mhm.
thinking about a side hustle, maybe making some changes within your life. Don't do it yet.
Yeah. I would wait for clearer skies because we have one of the transits we've been keeping an eye on for the year, because I mentioned earlier Mars has entered his redemption arc. And this is because Mars is in Scorpio now. Mars loves Scorpio. In traditional astrology, Mars rules Scorpio, and it's the night sign, and Mars does better in nocturnal signs. And this just started. It started on Monday. And now Mars is going to be squaring Pluto. Mars square Pluto, if we go back in time, there's a lot of big and volatile headlines. I drove by Mars square Pluto on I-70 yesterday, and a pillar of fire as a truck had crashed into a power line. I drove back down I-70 many hours later, and the C-470 ramp was closed and covered in ambulances and fire trucks. Like, it's not, Pluto can obscure things, and Pluto is also about power, control, holding on to things. Mars is drive, passion, volatility, violence. And Mars can also be associated with vehicles. Like Mars and Mercury are where we look to for a lot of vehicle stuff, and especially if they have contact, which Mercury was trining Pluto as well. And that goes exact on Wednesday. And so I want people to be really cautious while moving. Like, this is not a good day or like a good week to like try and hit your max at the gym. This is not a good week to move like
Don't worry. Don't worry.
thoughtlessly.
That's never going to happen anyway during
Yeah.
any transit. Just saying.
Yeah.
I think about it. Just
Yeah.
hasn't happened. I don't know. I want to ask you because I felt this and others that I've spoken to in the last, say, month-ish,
Hmm.
even today and back, reevaluating relationships. Does it really support me? What I thought in that person isn't really what they are. Eh,
Hmm.
you know, I saw it in a different way. Now I'm seeing it for what it maybe really is. Is there a reason astrologically that may be coming up?
Um, I would be looking at where your Venus is and what your seventh house is doing to determine that. But I will say Venus did just dip into Virgo on September 19th, which can make us much more scrutinizing of relationships. It can make us really zoom in and be like, am I doing more for this person than they're doing for me consistently?
Yep.
Because, like sometimes it's okay to be doing more, but if it's always, that's a flag.
Well, but the word
Yeah.
is value. And
Hmm.
and I know it sounds harsh, but what value do they bring to your life
Hmm.
and what are you bringing to them? And is it lopsided? Doesn't even have to be, well, I helped Joe move, about 6 months ago, and he hasn't done anything for me. Not about that. It's
Yeah.
value could be a phone call and you just
Hmm.
feel like, yeah, they got me or whatever it might be. I just find that's going on with me. I'm just and others I've mentioned it too, and they're kind of thinking the same thing, where
Hmm.
people and nothing wrong with it. Season or a reason, people in your life, right?
Yep.
It seems like it's kind of coming to the forefront.
Yep.
But what I'm getting from you, Elle, is that you can't really do much here unless you look at your personal transit and what sits in certain spots.
I think you can do more if you look at that, but you can. So when I'm talking about the general transits and like what was happening with Mars and Pluto, that's called mundane astrology, and that impacts
Hmm.
everybody. That's
That
the
that
that's
sounds
like
so
global.
lame.
Yeah, it's just like this is our astro weather. This is what everybody's dealing with. But if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, knowing your chart,
Yep.
seeing an astrologer is so helpful. And while there are apps that can do it, I'm also very picky about which ones people pick. And I'm just going to say right out of the gate, please do not use ChatGPT for your astrology chart.
Ooh,
It will
okay.
make up placements, it will do things that are astronomically impossible. Please don't.
I 100% agree. Thank you for saying that. And
Yeah.
my friend recently tested a little bit with ChatGPT 5, the latest, asking basic questions. What is the majority political party? Basically, who's the president? It was wrong. And then he questioned it, and it was kind of back, it was dancing around the answer, and then finally said, I
Mhm.
am incorrect. I should have researched ChatGPT. I should have researched a little bit deeper. So, yes, to your point, I didn't even think of it,
Yeah.
but I'm glad you said it. 'Cause,
Oh, it shows up in our community a lot, and people will
well,
be like, astrologers, why did ChatGPT tell me this? And it's like, because you shouldn't have asked. Like,
yeah. Mm. Um,
So
Adrienne,
true. And
any
yeah.
your thoughts?
Well, so I was just gonna say, I feel like Chat GPT has become so pervasive. Like my high school students are even talking about, oh, kids are using it to write their essays, and it's like, oh, that's just a terrible idea. So, and something that I was thinking as well when you're talking about sort of the mundane astrology and the larger transits going on, and the need to revisit relationships and things like this. I think part of the themes surrounding this recent eclipse was very much that. It's sort of like, shedding old patterns that don't serve a higher purpose any longer.
Hmm.
And I think that it kind of all plays into the same thing, right? Whether it's relationships or whether it's, hey, I'm overusing Chat GPT or overusing social media or, whatever it might be that's impacting your life in a way that may not be the most positive thing, right? And so being able to recognize this eclipse portal as sort of an opportunity to shed those things, to say, okay, I'm going to shed these old patterns and I'm going to now, as the moon begins to wax to our full moon, use that energy to sort of bring in all of the positive new patterns that we want to establish and to replace those old ones with positive things, with healthy things, with things that do serve our higher good. And so that's where astrology can come in really handy too, and kind of go hand in hand with what I do, which is helping people to shed those old patterns and reestablish new ones that are in fact healthy.
It's amazing how it all works together.
Yeah.
There's a place for all of it. I call it that they're tools.
Yeah.
Hypnotherapy, great tool for me, was fantastic. Reiki there, and same thing with astrology. And I once had an astrologer. This is I want to say 4 years ago. Do a chart on me, and this is how accurate this is for anybody that they're out there. It's a science, by the way. Out of and this is where I go blank. Whatever, the chart, and there's different quadrants or whatever. And she's looking at one of them. She says, "See those three things right there? Those are your kids." I have three kids.
mm,
I'm thinking, how do you know that? And then she even went into detail and said, and then the middle child there is destined for, some type of public service work, community. Well, yes, my son is a scout and became an Eagle Scout last couple of years. And then she's like, the other one, she has empathy and, helps people. She's a nurse. That's my oldest one. How do you know that?
oh, my first thought was that she was probably looking at your fifth house, because
I
the
thought you
fifth
were going to
house
say
is
Facebook, but then I was going to
no,
counter
no,
that and say it wasn't on
the fifth
Facebook.
house is kids, but in some traditional techniques, you can see it in the tenth, which is actually Adrianne, where we see your kids. Yours are up in the
Yeah,
10th. Yeah,
that
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
But
Yeah.
but
yeah,
okay, all
yeah,
right, I got
yeah.
all that.
So
But
it's
how does somebody know who doesn't know you that you even have three kids and then can go into detail? We didn't even have their dates of birth or all of that input. It
yeah.
it was just a well, there it is. Those are
Your
your three.
whole chart is your whole life and everyone
Crazy.
in it. And like particularly and that's one reason I like traditional astrology and have moved towards it from the psychological is because the psychological just treats your chart as you. But in traditional astrology, you're like first house of self, second house is your resources, your wallet, third house, that's your neighbors, that's your extended family, that's like cousins, siblings. Fourth house, that's your parents and grandparents, your ancestry, who you are at home. Fifth house is your kids, creativity. How do you like to have fun? Sixth house, health, especially health problems, labor, stuff like that. But then you can also find like in a surgeon's chart may have a bunch of sixth or 12th house placements, not because they're ill, but because they deal with people who are ill. And then seventh house is your partners. And so what's really interesting too is sometimes you'll look around and you won't be feeling a transit. But then you look at what house it's in and you look at those people in your life and it's like, oh, this 11th house transit is blowing up my friend group. I'm fine, but my friends are not fine. Like, and same
Wow.
thing, 10th house career. It's like, oh, I'm okay, but my boss just got fired. Like, and
Which could
so,
impact you.
uh-huh, exactly. And so
Mhm.
it's the whole landscape of your life. And so you can find everybody in your life is hanging out in your chart.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
Just for reference, Elle, I pulled up my chart real quick on one of the L. Alexandra approved astrology apps, which is Astromatrix for the record. This is the one that
writing that
I
down.
was
yeah, yeah.
specifically told to download. So this is what your chart would look like to
Mm-hmm.
have your full astrological chart. So this is mine. This is what
Yep.
my birth chart looks like right now.
Yep.
And so you can say like, Elle, you said something about my 10th
Yeah,
house.
the 10th house. So you have Jupiter in the 10th house and the
Hmm.
moon in the 11th, but and they're conjunct across sign. Jupiter
Hmm.
makes a lot of things.
Yeah.
So in ancient astrology, some people, their part of their path and part of their legacy is really heavily focused on kids. So you'll actually find it in the 10th and can't imagine why that's there for you. Uh, and then in
Not with my kids. What are you talking
yeah.
about?
Well, and then another really good example is actually Elon Musk, because in a biography, we finally got his birth time, and the entire astrology community blew up when the bio came out because we're like, we got the chart. Um, and
Wow.
when you do his chart, he has like a really active fifth house and he has Jupiter there. And he literally has so many kids that it's speculative. When you look at articles, it doesn't even say how many he has definitively. They're like, we think he has 13. And he has said, which is hilarious, that everyone is morally obligated to have children because of the population crisis. And so he's like really fixated on procreation, which is right there in his chart. He also has Mercury on the ascendant, and he is literally a technology person.
That's
Like,
crazy.
yeah. So
Okay.
it's like it's all there. And same thing with a really active third house, which is transportation, and he deals with cars and
There you
rockets
go.
and yeah, yeah,
We're out of time. I can keep going. This is
yeah.
fascinating, and especially tag team with both of you. You know, me in the
Yeah.
middle. Yeah, the best of everything here. Adrienne, starting with you. If somebody is looking for some clarity in their life, maybe it's within changing energy or clearing it or hypnotherapy, figuring out their past and how it translates to the present. How do they find you?
My website is wildhearthealingco.com. And I'm also on Facebook at Wild Heart Healing.
So cool. And Elle, how do we connect with you?
I am at Wordwitcher on all the things. WORDWITCHER. And I'm all over socials and I post a free weekly forecast And if you want even more content, you can find me on my Patreon, which is also at Wordwitcher.
Amazing talking with both of you. This has been like very insightful and clarity on a lot of it. Thank you both for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
So
Steve.
cool. All right, we're coming right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.